Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, what I'm proposing to do is to read from the Bhagavatam to start with, and then discuss a little bit about Ramananda Roy, because he's a very interesting character. So, I was given 2 verses to cover today, so I'll read the first one. Is there a sloka board or? Turyam Cheda Virohena Turyam Cheda Virohena Turyam Cheda Virohena Varena Jagrihu Drumaha Varena Jagrihu Drumaha Varena Jagrihu Drumaha Turyang Chera Virohena Varena Jagrihu Drumaha Tesham Niyasa Rupena Tesham Niyasa Rupena Tesham Niyasa Rupena Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate Teshang Niyasa Rupena Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate Turyang Cheda Virohena Varena Jagrihi Drumaha Teshang Niyasa Rupena Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate Turyang Cheda Virohena Varena Jagrihu Drumaha Teshang Niyasa Rupena Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate. Brahma Hatya Pradrishyate. Varena Jagrihu Drumaha Vaishnavis? Turyam 1/4. Cheda, although being cut. Virohena, of growing again. Varena, because of the benediction. Jagrihu, accepted. Drumaha, the trees. Tesham, of them. Niyasarupena, by the liquid oozing from the trees. Brahmahatya, the reaction for killing a brahmana. Pradrishyate is visible. Translation. In return for Indra's benediction that their branches and twigs would grow back when trimmed, the trees accepted 1/4 of the reactions for killing a brahmana. These reactions are visible in the flowing sap from trees. Therefore, one is forbidden to drink this sap. Responsively. In return for Indra's benediction, that their branches and twigs would grow back when trimmed, the trees accepted 1/4 of the reactions for killing a brahmana. These reactions are visible in the flowing of sap from trees. Therefore, one is forbidden to drink this sap. So there's no purport. So I'll read verse 9. Shashvat kama varenanghas turiyam jagrihu striya rajarupena tasvangho masi pradrishyate. In return for the Lord Indra's benediction that they would be able to enjoy lusty desires continuously, even during pregnancy, for as long as sex is not injurious to the embryo, women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions. As a result of those reactions, women manifest the signs of menstruation every month. Purport. Women as a class are very lusty, and apparently their continuous lusty desires are never satisfied. In return for Lord Indra's benediction that there would be no cessation to their lusty desires, women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions for killing a brahmana. So, this is another wonderful, instructive story from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as we experience, all throughout the Bhagavatam, these stories are telling us something. They're giving us a message. And here, in this story, it's no different. There are many wonderful lessons for us to learn. And if we're a little bit, sort of perceptive, or a little bit sort of following the story, we can actually understand a lot. So, firstly, we see here is Indra, out of anger, what did he do? He killed a brahmana out of anger. Why? Because Vritrasura, he was he was related to the demigods, to the Devatas. Sorry, his relatives were all not Devatas, Daityas, the demons. His relatives were the demons, but he had been engaged by Brihaspati as the priest for the Devatas, and so he was offering oblations to Agni and to Indra and all these different personalities. But secretly, he was also offering oblations to the Daityas. And Indra became very upset with this. He became very angry, and he cut off his 3 heads. And then Indra started to reflect, actually, this is a very abominable thing I've done. I've killed a brahmana. I've killed my guru. And so, as a result, he had to experience sinful reaction. And it's mentioned in an earlier verse, it might have been verse 6, that Indra, because he was very powerful, he could have easily have counteracted this. Just like we see with Parikshit. He was cursed by Shringi to get bitten by a snake bird. But it's described he could have easily have counteracted this. But because he's a devotee, he saw that this was actually the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That Krishna had a deeper purpose here. And aren't we glad that he didn't counteract the curse? because otherwise we wouldn't have heard the Bhagavatam. Yeah? So he understood that there was a greater purpose there. And this is the nature of a devotee. In the material world, people are just very caught up with what's right in front of them. They're very caught up with their sense gratification. They're very caught up with their own small existence. And everything that's going on, that's all there is. They don't see anything beyond themselves. This is the nature of a materialistic person, even actually a demonic person. That I am the controller, I'm the enjoyer, I'm perfect, I am happy. That everything is just centered around me. I am the center of the universe. And the interesting thing is that everyone thinks that. But there can only be one center, so somebody's got to be wrong. But actually, a devotee has a very different perspective. A devotee is understanding that I'm not the center of the universe, I'm serving that person who's the center. And Prabhupada would often make the point that Krishna consciousness simply means taking the I out of the center of everything, me, taking me out of the center and putting Krishna in the center. And that's what we see here that Indra is doing. As a devotee, he's understanding that, okay, I've committed, I've become overwhelmed by anger. And as we know in the Bhagavad Gita in the 16th chapter, it describes there's three gateways to hell: lust, anger, and greed. So devotees appreciate these things and they avoid these things. We avoid anger, we avoid greed, we avoid lust, because we understand that these will take us away from Krishna. So Indra's seen that actually, I've done something sinful, and even though he could counteract it, he considered, no, I'm not going to counteract, I will suffer this. And there's a really nice verse that Prabhupada quotes a fair bit, this Tatte nukampam sushamikshimano bunjana evatma kripam vipakam hridvag vapu vividadan namaste jivete yo muktipate sadoya bhak. That the devotee understands that I'm suffering so much due to my past sinful activities, but Krishna, out of his kindness, he's reduced it to a token just to remind me that I've been sinful, just to remind me that in the past I forgot Krishna and I did these sinful activities. So Indra, in the same vein, he's accepted for the period of 1 year, he's accepted these sinful reactions to remind himself that he had performed some sinful act, that killing Vritrasura was not a good thing to do. But out of anger, because he became deluded by this material quality, he became completely deluded. And we see that it happens to Indra from time to time. He became lustful over his guru's wife, and then he got cursed to have vaginas all over his body. It was a pretty horrible thing. And then he's begging, he's saying, please, this you can't leave it like this. And so it was changed into eyes. So now he's got eyes all over his body, as a result of his lusty desires. And even at one point, I was speaking with Akilatma about this yesterday. There's a nice a verse in the third canto where it talks about the living entity. I can't remember the verse. Probably some of you know it. Where it's this Kapila Deva is describing how the living entity is never averse to any position, whatever condition of life they find themselves in, they're satisfied. And you'll see, just like here in a big city like Delhi, you find people that they're living in very difficult. Some are living in very difficult situations, but they're satisfied, eating all sorts of abominable foods. They're completely satisfied. And you'll find that no matter what happens in this material world, how bad things become, people will always find satisfaction in that situation. And when you try to change them or give them something better, no, this is good, this is a good situation. And then Prabhupada, in the purport to that verse, he quotes the story about when Indra became a pig. And for those of you who know the story, you know that actually, because Indra wasn't in the heavenly planets managing the situation, because he's the king of heaven, so he's the manager, and so things weren't going so well because there's no one managing. Just like we see here in the Delhi temple, things are very nicely managed. The temple's always clean. Things, the arti, everything's going on very nicely on schedule. This is due to management. And if you took away the management, things would stop running on time. Things would stop being clean. So management is very important. So Indra is the manager of the universal situation. And when he was living in the hog body, things started to fall apart. So Brahma, seeing this, he said, okay, I'll go down and I'll bring Indra back. And he did that, and then he went to see Indra in his hog situation, and he said, please come back to the heavenly planets. He said, well, heavenly planets, we have an expression in Australia, it doesn't get any better than this. Yeah? And it's a fact, he's in this horrible situation, and he's saying, I've got everything I need here. I've got a beautiful wife, I've got beautiful children, and look where I'm living. It's so nice. It's like, a very nice situation. And it's just like, I went for a walk last night with Nrsimha Prabhu, and then you go out the gate, where the cars go, and you turn left, and immediately there's that really pleasant smell. Yeah. But some people find that to be quite nice. For me, I had to cover my nose, and it's like, oh, it's such a horrible smell. And it reminds me of, there's a story that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples told about when they went to Burma for preaching. And they were trying to bring people to Krishna consciousness, so they thought, okay, well, let's cook some prasad for them. And so they're cooking prasad with ghee, they're making puris with ghee, and all the villagers are complaining, oh, what's that horrible smell? They just didn't like the smell of the ghee. And for devotees, for someone who's in the mode of goodness, it's such a pleasant smell. Yet they had this interesting habit where they used to have this earthenware pot near the door with a lid on it. And whenever anything in the village died, they would get it and put it in the pot. Whatever it was, a cat, a dog, whatever, they put it in the pot and they keep the lid on it. And it would rot and start to ferment. And then whenever they had a festival, they take the pot, they get a spoon of this stuff, and they put it on top of their meal. So you can see how people influenced by the different modes of nature find things, they find that very relishable. Why? Because they're influenced by the mode of ignorance. And they think this is wonderful. So we can see that what happens in this material world is that when people are influenced by the modes of material nature, it causes them to accept things which others might consider unacceptable. And if you look at our position from the situation of the demigods, they'll think, oh, such an unpleasant body, it's so smelly, it's so many problems with it, it's so short-lived. So everything is relative to the position one finds oneself in. And that's the point that these stories demonstrate. So we see here that Indra, knowing that he performed sinful activities, he accepted the reaction for the period of 1 year. Then after 1 year, what he did was he divided the sins into 4 places, into 4 parts, and deposited them into different places. And the reason why it was divided into 4 parts, because see what happened is the elements of his body had become affected by sin: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Right? But that's 5. And he only divided into 4. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that ether cannot become contaminated because of its subtle nature. So the earth, the water, the fire, and the air had become contaminated. So therefore, to purify these 4 things, he deposited the sin in different places. One of the things is he gave the earth the benediction. The earth would take one quarter of the sin. If when ditches were dug, they would automatically fill with water, because the sins prior to that, they didn't automatically fill with water. But as a result of absorbing the sin, there's deserts. And Prabhupada explains that those people who live in deserts, they're living there as a result of having to suffer some of that brahmahatya, killing a brahmana. And also, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comments that you can't study the Veda in the desert because it's a sinful place. And then in verse 8, I think it was describing how the trees, they took also 1/4 of that, and that manifests in the form of sap. The benediction they got was that their twigs and leaves would grow if they're cut. And you see even with some trees, if you cut a piece off, you put it in the ground, it'll start to grow. So this is part of that benediction. But the reaction was the sap, and the sin is in the sap. So generally speaking, we don't eat or consume the sap from trees, and there are many things that come from trees. I think some of these things are not contaminated. Like as far as I understand, the sap that comes from date trees is not contaminated. I'm not sure what the story is there, but as far as I understand, that's not contaminated. But then you have maple trees; they give off sap, that they make maple syrup from. But apparently, if you boil it, it also becomes purified. So when they make maple syrup, they boil the maple syrup. So there's different kind of dispensations there where not everything is completely impure. And then the other one was water, foam and water. So the benediction was that when you add water to anything, it increases in volume. And you've probably noticed that when you add water, just like if you're mixing up cement, for instance, and you add the water, the volume increases. It's kind of mystical. You're like, how does that happen? You got this much and this much, you add it, it's more. It's a bit mystical. But as a result of absorbing that, of that benediction, the sin was that whenever there's foam in water or bubbles, it's impure. And that's one of the reasons why devotees don't drink bubbly drinks, is because it's actually sin. And you don't drink these fizzy drinks. Oops, we're all looking around. Limca and 7-Up and things like that. It's not good to drink these things. Yeah. Although, actually, Prabhupada did drink 7-Up, didn't he? He used to call it 7-Up. He would drink 7-Up and also Schweppes bitter lemon. Sometimes he'd drink that. But generally, we avoid these bubbly things. And then in this verse, it's interesting. It's talking about how I find this intriguing, because I couldn't imagine a Vaishnavi ever accepting this as a benediction, that there would be no end to their lusty desires. It seems to me that this was a benediction that was awarded to materialistic people, because that seems to me to be a curse, not a benediction. It's like no end to the lusty desires. But of course, we understand in Kali Yuga, this is not just for men, for women, it's for men also. All living entities in this age are just completely consumed by lust. And Krishna talks about this extensively in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. This dushparena nalena cha, how this lust is never satisfied, and it burns like fire. And you can see in this age that the living entities are so consumed by lust. This whole civilization is simply driven by lust to enjoy their senses in one way or another. They want to satisfy their eyes, they want to satisfy their ears, they want to satisfy their tongue. So many, all the senses, they're just driven by lust. And Krishna points this out also in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, how the jiva, when they're influenced by the modes of nature, they cannot refrain even for a moment from acting. The modes of material nature push them to act in so many different ways. And this is, we can see this, especially here in a big city like Delhi. Everything you see going on, it's just people being driven by their lusty desires, being driven by the modes of material nature to try to enjoy the situation they find themselves in. And as devotees, we understand that no matter how much you endeavor in this material world, you'll never be satisfied. It doesn't matter what you do. And this is the point that Krishna makes, it's just like you have a fire. When we did the yagya the other day, you can see the more fuel you put on the fire, what happens? Does it go out? It gets bigger. And then it needs more fuel, it needs more fuel. The bigger it gets, the more fuel it needs to sustain. So it's the same with our material desires. They have one type of intoxication people take sometimes is called narcotics. And narcotics, things like opiates and all these types of things. The nature of these narcotics is that people, they get a particular type of satisfaction from, a high from taking these narcotics. But as they take them, the more they take, the less effect it has, so they have to take more, and it has, to get the same effect. And they keep taking more and more and more and more to try and get the same effect. But the effect reduces. And it gets to the point where they take the dose they take is so big, they die as a result. This is the nature of material enjoyment. It's actually destructive. The more you try to enjoy the self in this material world, the more you become entangled in this situation, and eventually it brings about your death. And there's so many examples we can see of trying to enjoy in this material world, just like if you have a fire at night time, right? What happens when if you have the fire outside? Moths come. They're attracted by the flame. They enjoy the flame. They enjoy the heat. But because there's a fire, what they do, they fly into the fire and they die. In Australia, we have a lot of insects, mosquitoes and flies and things like that. And people have invented these things which give off like a blue light. I don't know if you have them. I've never seen them here in India. They give off a blue light and it attracts the insects. But just in front of the light, they have these electric things. And so the insect flies to the blue light, zzz, it gets fried. That's material enjoyment. You might be attracted to it. You might think it's very wonderful. But it'll bring about your death. It'll bring about so much suffering for you. And this verse here, where it talks about the, how women, as a class, there's no end to their lusty desires. This is not talking about devotee ladies. This is talking about materialistic people. And the thing is like men and women in this age, it's all the same. It doesn't matter. It's all the same because there's simply, people don't even know what it means to be a man or to be a woman in this age. They think the whole purpose of life is to enjoy their senses. So whether it's man, woman, whatever, it's the same thing. They're just hell-bent on trying to enjoy themselves in this material world. And they never do. They never achieve that point of satisfaction. So, as Krishna said, it's never satisfied. It burns like fire. And if you keep feeding the fire, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and destroys everything. Yeah? And fire just completely destroys everything. So this is the nature of enjoyment in this material world. Just a little bit on Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy is quite an extraordinary personality, to say the least. And many elements of Ramananda Roy I don't understand at all. How is it, I can understand within me, there's one, within this body, there's one prominent jiva, yeah? who people call Nrsimha Kavaca Prabhu. That's not the case with Ramananda Roy. There's Arjuna, Lalita, Arjuna Saki. That's the three I can think of, and I think there's a few more. This is according to Gaura Ganesh Deepika. How do you understand that? I can't understand that. But our acharyas talk about it very matter of fact, so obviously they understand how this manifests. I just cannot understand how that works. Other things about Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy, there's two main sections in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the Madhya Lila chapter 8, it talks about how when Mahaprabhu went touring in India, he went down South India and he met with Ramananda Roy. And they met privately and they had a wonderful discussion where Ramananda Roy Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had asked Ramananda Roy to share with him what was the ultimate goal of life. And then Ramananda Roy, he was presenting so many different things to him, but not just like, I think this, I think that, it wasn't his opinion. He was presenting everything based on Shastra. So we can see, obviously a very, very deep understanding of the scriptures. And then, but Mahaprabhu was going, no, this is very good what you're saying, but I want more, go higher, go higher. And finally he comes to the point of this, pure love for Krishna, unalloyed service offered by the residents of Vrindavan. And then he brings that to the point of that service which is offered by the gopis. That is the highest. So that was in that conversation that happened in, I can't remember where, Madras I think he lived, wasn't it? Huh? Ramananda Roy, he was in Madras, he was the governor in Madras or something, was he? Yeah, Madras. Yeah. And he was a kayasta, which is kind of a different sort of a class. Is that they're kind of sometimes artisans, sometimes managers, things like that. Then in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a really interesting story of when there's a devotee, I think his name was Parameshwari Das, came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wanted to understand about Krishna Prem. And Mahaprabhu said, I'm unqualified. You go speak to Ramananda Roy. He's the foremost exponent of this. And so then Parameshwari Das, he went to see Ramananda Roy. And so he met with Ramananda Roy's secretary, and he said, Ramananda Roy's busy right now, he can't see you, so you just have to wait. So he waited. And this went on for days. He would come, and every day he's busy. And then finally he discovered that actually what was going on was Ramananda Roy was attending to the Devdasis from the Jagannath temple. And he was teaching them how to dance, he was teaching them how to hold particular mudras and things like that. And then when they were finished their dancing, because of their sweating and that, he would bathe them. And this to me is just like, I cannot conceive of that. Even I see the form of a woman, I'm attracted. And these were like very, very beautiful, girls that he's actually physically bathing them, washing their bodies and rubbing oil over their body. I just cannot conceive how anyone could do that and not be affected. This is the nature of Ramananda Roy. Is he was so elevated that and so pure that even though he was engaged in this exchange with these beautiful young virgin girls, he wasn't affected at all. Not a trace of lust manifested in his heart. Nothing. And this is why he was able to be the foremost exponent of Krishna Prem, because Krishna Prem will not manifest in our hearts if there is any trace of lust. We have to be completely devoid, and not just lust for the opposite sex, but any kind of desire to enjoy this material world will block us from Krishna Prem. So he's a very, very extraordinary person. And it's interesting because when Parameshwari Das became aware of this, then he went back and kind of complained to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You're saying he's the foremost proponent of Prem, but here he is bathing these young girls. I don't understand this. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained to him why he is so qualified, because he's doing this and he's not influenced by lust. And it's interesting that when Krishna was being, when Maharaj Yudhisthira was doing the Rajasuya Yagya, and usually when they do a yagya, they establish the person who gets worshipped. So they established Krishna as that person. And of course there was quite a few people objecting to that, especially Shishupal and others. But then Bhishma Dev, he said that, okay, I'm a lifelong brahmachari. So I've never had any contact with women. Krishna, he dances with women in the forest in the middle of the night, tens of thousands of them, and he's not affected. I could not do that. So Bhishma Dev was a very, very deeply, or is a very, very deeply realized personality. He understood the nature of Krishna. And in the same way, the nature of Ramananda Roy. He's unaffected at all, nothing at all by these material desires. His only interest is to serve Krishna. And we see that that's this element of service to Krishna, this unalloyed service to Krishna. This is present there in Arjuna. It's also present there in Lalita Shakya. It's also present there in Arjuna Gopi. How they have this unalloyed service. And it's just like, like when you make, what an alloy is, right? An alloy is a metal that's mixed. Just like when they make this, like this thing's aluminium. And it's alumina and bauxite and a few other different things they mix together to make this alloy. So it's not pure. Whereas when you get something like gold or silver, just like you get pure silver, 9999 silver, it's like 99.99% pure. There may be some small impurity there. But the idea is like, at least I can talk from my experience, is the bhakti that I perform, if you could call it bhakti, I'm sure it is because I'm trying to follow the rules and regulations, it's mixed. There's impurities there. I have material desires. I won't go into the material desires, but I definitely have material desires. But this is not sufficient to deliver us to the lotus feet of Krishna. We have to become purified of all material desire. Name, fame, glory, whatever it is you're attracted by in this material world, you have to give that up and become attracted only by Krishna. And the thing is, it doesn't mean you just become a renunciate and live in the forest and you have nothing. No, whatever you have, you use that for Krishna. And this is one of the main messages of the Bhagavad Gita. We see how Arjuna, he wanted to give it all up and live in the forest, and Krishna says, no, you can't do that because that'll go against your nature. Your nature is to fight. So use that for serving me. And so whatever it is your nature is, use that nature in Krishna's service, then your nature becomes purified. The anarthas will be removed, and the true nature will become revealed. And we see with these great personalities, they don't become like lifeless blobs or become completely devoid of their personality. No, that personality, whoever they are, becomes purified, and they use that to serve Krishna. And that's, what we have to do. So, yeah, Ramananda Roy is quite an amazing example for us all to be inspired by in our Krishna consciousness. All right, any comments, questions? Mohan Rupa Prabhu.
Thank you, Nrsimha Prabhu, for your wonderful explanation, and especially about this Indra, how he killed the Brahmana and what all reaction it was. The sinful reactions were there. So it's a very important point that we have to cultivate Krishna consciousness very seriously. Otherwise, these kind of unwanted desires will keep on hanging here and there, and will continue for life after life. So this is very important that we become more and more serious in Krishna consciousness.
And that's an interesting point you raised, because also we see there with Indra, previously he had offended Brihaspati. So that seed was there in the heart, and then that caused him to kill the Brahmana, because that seed was in the heart. And this is the point. It's like there's that verse in the second chapter of the first canto where it talks about how Nasta Prayasha Bhadrasya Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, that destroys these things almost to nil. Yeah? Almost to nil. It means there's something still there. And so we have to work really diligently to root out any desire we have in the heart, so there's nothing left but service to Krishna. And that's why, devotional service cannot be a social activity. Can't just be something we come and do on weekends and come and meet our friends. And you can do that, and it will be beneficial, no doubt, because anyway, it's just like with electricity. You have the electric lights here. Any way you touch the wire, you'll get the charge. Devotional service is the same. Any way you come to contact with Krishna. Interesting example is like when we offer food to Krishna, offer prasad, bhoga to Krishna. Anyone who's involved with that act, the person who grew it, the plant it came from, the person who harvested it, the person who transports it, the person who sells it in the market, the person who buys it in the market, the person who brings it to the temple, the person who cuts it up, the person who cooks it, the person who offers it, and the person who eats it. They all get benefit. That's the nature of Krishna consciousness. So the idea is to be actively engaged in connecting ourselves to Krishna in whatever way we can, but also we have to study. We have to deeply study these pastimes to understand how these anarthas reside in our heart and how deep they go in the heart and how to remove these anarthas. And even we see here, another interesting point is Indra, being a devotee, realized, I've committed a sinful act, I need to repent. That's why he took on for 1 year. He could have just said, no, I'm not doing this, and just overcame. But he said, no, I need to do this. I have to set an example. So he took this repentance. Same with Parikshit. He could have also overcome, but no, he took it because he's a devotee of Krishna. He understands that ultimately Krishna's will is supreme. So we see there's many wonderful stories, and even with Vritrasura, you look at Vritrasura, the stellar example of bhakti that he gave. Like he's telling Indra, keep going, don't be discouraged, fight me, it's your destiny to kill me. Even though Vritrasura was winning the fight. But he was a devotee also, and he understood that whatever Krishna, whatever is destined by my fate, whatever outcome Krishna is looking for, that will happen. And we just have to be enthusiastic. It's just like, this Krishna consciousness movement is said to go on for the next 10,000 years. And so we can just sit back and watch, or we can be enthusiastic participants. So if you're an enthusiastic participant, you'll get the benefit. But if we get all mental and become discouraged like Indra was, then you're not going to get the benefit. So many, many wonderful stories in these pastimes. This is why the Bhagavatam is so important for us. All right. Yes, Prabhu.
I have one question. Like we see Ramananda Rai was the governor of Madras, and we see great personality. Like even Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a magistrate, and then Srila Prabhupada also was running a pharmacy. He was working in a pharma company also. So how to understand this? How because they are also engaged in other activities also. So how to understand that? Because he was also a follower of Gandhi, Prabhupada during his college days. So how to understand? Because they're all Nitya Siddhas.
Yeah.
So what is the reason that they have to function like this also?
Yeah, it's as a grihasta, you need to maintain the family. And you know, I would see that more as Srila Prabhupada setting an example of how to maintain the family. And you know, I was listening to a class yesterday. Prabhupada was talking from the Gita. Prabhupada was talking about how in the Western countries the government has got such nice arrangements that even if you don't have a job, you can still get money. Whereas here in India, if you don't have income, you'll die. There's no government handouts or anything like that. So but you know, we all have responsibilities, you know, and especially if you take on the Grihastha ashram, you have, you know, many responsibilities you have to fulfill. So maintaining the family is one of those things. But Prabhupada made the comment. He said, "There's never a point where I forgot Krishna." So he was always absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and especially, you know, in 1922 when he met his guru, and his guru gave him that instruction. You know, you're an intelligent man. You know, if you ever get money, print books in the English language. He was always keeping that in the back of his mind. But it's only in I think, I can't remember what year it was, when you know, his wife decided to sell his Bhagavatams to buy tea biscuits. That was like the catalyst which said, okay, now I'm going to do this full time. And so, you know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a little bit different, because it seems externally he was manifesting Mayavadi tendencies, so a bit hard to understand that. You know, it's okay, you can say pastime, but that doesn't really help me to understand it very much. But generally we see, you know, another interesting example is Tulsidas. He also tried to do, because his wife was pushing him all the time, you know, you have to bring in money. But he was just so absorbed in his bhajan that whatever he did, he couldn't do it properly. You know, but somehow or other Krishna took care. And so in the lives of these great Vaishnavas, I think not so much the external activity of what they're doing, you know, getting a job, making money, stuff, but really I think the example for us to follow is how they're constantly absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, no matter what they're doing. And you know, you see the example of Prahlad Maharaj. His father was tormenting him in so many different ways, yet he never gave up that absorption in Krishna. And I think that's the real lesson for us there. Do your duty. You have to, and that's the point that Krishna's making to Arjuna. You have to do your duty. But do your duty thinking of me. And he makes that point, I think it's the 12th chapter of the Gita, where he's talking about, you know, the best thing is to always be absorbed in me. You know? And then in the concluding stages of the Gita, he makes the same point, just absorb yourself in me. So, you know, I think that's the example that the acharyas are really giving us, even though they may do so many external things to maintain the situation. Yeah. Okay. As always, thank you so much for tolerating me. It's wonderful to come here. It's such an inspiring temple to see, you know, always clean, and you know, there's so many nice devotees here, and enthusiastic kirtans, enthusiastically serving Krishna. It's an inspirational temple. So thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hare Hare.
Prabhuji ki jai.